few years ago, I got a sign that I hang up in my home every year around Christmas. And it's become one of my favorite decorations because it says something that I believe tells the truth so clearly. It says that three wise women would have asked for directions, arrived on time, helped to deliver the baby, cleaned the stables, made a casserole, and there would be peace on earth. I had to start the new year off with a little bit of humor. Well, now we've made it to Epiphany, the last day of the Christmas season and the day when we remember the story of the Magi who came to visit Jesus after his birth. Now, even if we've never heard of the word Epiphany or heard it used for this day, we've heard this part of the story. We've seen it in our manger scenes, and we've included it in Christmas plays and scenes, almost as if these travelers came right after the shepherds arrived. Now, we've called these people a number of different things: wise men, three kings, magi. And we've even made them three because they brought three different gifts with them. But in reality, if you listened closely to Kelly as she read Matthew doesn't tell us that there were three of them, so there could have been more. I prefer to call them magi because the original Greek word for what Matthew calls wise men translates to mean magi, also known as astrologers. So these magi, I feel, have always been so mysterious to me. And so like any good mystery, I like finding out some more information about them. And in doing so, I think that we can also learn a little bit more about ourselves and our own part in God's story. So let's dig a little bit deeper together. These magi most likely come from Persia, which is now modern-day Iran. And they probably didn't arrive right after Jesus was born. Many estimate it would have taken them 60 days to make the journey from Persia to Bethlehem. But even if they saw the star before Jesus was born and went on their journey before then, their visit probably happened after Jesus was dedicated in the temple. So it could have been 6 weeks or more after the birth of Jesus. They also were most likely from the priestly caste of the Zoroastrian religion, which originated in Persia about 600 to 700 years before Christ. And so the prophet Zoroaster was to Zoroastrianism what Moses is to Judaism. And both of them share a number of theological and ethical ideas with one another. They both believe in a good and all-powerful God. But the Zoroastrians are also as different from Judaism as Islam is from Judaism. So these magi were very well educated. They were devout believers, and they were highly respected among their people. And as you heard in the scene in the video, they were known as Gentiles since they didn't practice Judaism. They were stargazers, astrologers, who took signs from the stars to be very valuable, often signaling the birth of an important figure. So in knowing all of this about them now, they were kind of unexpected visitors, don't you think? God chose a group of foreigners, Gentiles, even priests of another religion, to go and find Jesus. And what's more, these non-Jewish astrologers traveled 1,200 miles to see this baby and to bring him gifts. It seems to me that a group of people who would travel that far after studying the stars have a great depth of faith and an assurance of God's plan. But these magi are so much more than just foreigners who had a strong faith and decided to travel over 1,000 miles to go and visit the new Messiah. They really make all the difference in the life of Jesus and his family. It was clear to see in this scene that we just watched how hungry King Herod was for power. He played all confident and cool and friendly with these men, but deep down, He was fearful. Matthew tells us that. And those in power often fear competition. Things were not turning out for Herod as he had expected it to be. He was very insecure, questioning his own control, even distrusting his own power and authority. He was so insecure that he decided to hurt his own people just so his own power could stay in place. We hear at the end of our reading how the Magi are told in a dream not to return to Herod as Herod had requested, so they return to go home another way. And after this, Joseph also had a dream. We don't hear it in our reading, but it happens right after this. He's told in a dream by an angel to take his family to Egypt because Herod was going to destroy Jesus. And sure enough, when the Magi didn't return to Herod, he was furious. And so he ordered for all the children in and around Bethlehem under the age of 2 to be killed. Just like that. And Jesus was safe because of Joseph's courage. And I feel like this is the part of the story that never gets told. The Holy Family, who everyone was supposed to be all excited about, they became refugees in an instant. Jesus' family, like so many refugee families today, were fleeing the brutality of a dictator who had no problem putting to death anyone who seemed to be a threat. The same powers who were at play back then are still at play today. Their flight to Egypt, their journey to Egypt, was a several 100-mile trip. And what's interesting is that you wonder how this family had the means to make that kind of trip. But I think it's because of the gifts that the Magi brought. They turned out to save their lives when they needed them the most. So these Magi, I think, are really appropriately named wise men. They're not just foreigners who follow a star to see if there really is a new Messiah, or bring gifts that are really expensive and then go a different way because a dream told them to. They are so much more than that. Theologian Caroline Lewis writes about the Magi in this way. This is what she says. As much as I want to cast the wise men as just innocent and uninformed responders, they are resistors. They insist that their witness testifies to truth that will challenge power. They will defy authority, all because they believe in their own experience, their own encounter, their own epiphany. They get that there just might be more to the story than what we have been told. And therein lies the heart of our Christian faith. I think there are a lot of Herods in our world today. There are leaders today who will do anything to keep their power and their own plan in place, even if that means hurting thousands of their own people. These leaders, like Herod, will lie and manipulate, and they will make everyone around them fearful, just like Matthew tells us that all of Jerusalem became frightened with King Herod at the news of Jesus. I wonder how many people even supported Herod's mandate of the massacre of the infants, because he may have made it seem so attractive and necessary. And so I think the question that we need to constantly ask ourselves is this: are we following the leaders of this world, or are we following Jesus? If we were the Magi, would we return to Herod, or would we have had the faith to go a different way? I think it can be so hard to go another way. Sometimes it's easier to just be quiet, to not make a fuss, to not get too loud. After all, we know how those people can be. We don't want to be the obnoxious person on social media who only posts about controversial issues and then ends up trolling others so that they can say what they want, since their way is the only right way according to them. But really, would we follow the Magi if we were there? Would we follow these foreigners of some other strange religion? Would we rely on the dreams of some guys who decided to follow a star that supposedly represented the birth of the new Messiah? If we didn't know the rest of this story, would we trust them? Or would we trust Herod, a leader who's highly respected and accomplished and seems to know what he's doing because, well, he's the leader of the people, after all? I think it can be so much easier to just blend in, to go with the crowd, to not speak up against the injustices that are all around us. I know as a pastor, it's extremely hard. A lot of times, we're in a constant battle over what to say and how to say it and how to frame things so that our congregations will stay happy and not get too upset. We constantly ask ourselves, do we challenge our congregations to take risks, or will that be too risky? And if I say this one thing, will everyone be upset? These questions are often in my mind on Saturday night as I'm looking over my sermon. And oftentimes there's that still small voice that cuts off my questioning and says, Rachel, are you going to follow an institution? Or are you going to follow me? These Magi were willing to take a risk for the sake of God's plan. They were willing to make a king upset so that Jesus could survive and grow up to change the world. They believed enough in their own studies and in their own stories and in their own epiphany that was before them in this infant king, and in all that God had revealed to them, to take this leap of faith and to make a wise choice. So what does your story tell you? What is your own epiphany today? What has God revealed to you? And then how does that change your own story or your own actions for this new year? This year, I want to be as wise as the wise men. I want to follow the things that will lead me closer to Jesus. This year, I want to be on the side of those who are hurting, and I want to use my voice and my gifts to stand with them. And I want to take risks for the sake of God's plan. Will you join me? I pray that you will. Amen.